Okay, so welcome back, and now we're going to talk about similar triangles. Well, actually, we're going to be talking about in general is trigonometric trig functions, or defining trigonometric identities, trig functions, things like that. Okay, so trigonometric functions, but before we get there, we're going to start with ideas of triangles. So defining certain things, like for example, similar triangles. And so we're going to start with similar triangles. Well, what are similar triangles? Well, the properties of similar triangles really tell you everything you need to know about similar triangles. So similar triangles are triangles in which they have corresponding angles that are equal, but the corresponding sides are proportional. So what does that mean? In the simplest cases, similar triangles are triangles that look alike but are different sizes. That's really what it comes down to. Triangles that look alike but are different sizes, different scales, if you will. So again, in that case, both of these properties must be true. Okay, so corresponding angles are the same, they're equal, but the corresponding sides are not equal, but they're proportional. Okay, so for example, if we look at these two angles and we say, okay, these are two similar angles, what do we know about this? Well, we know that angle A1 is equal to angle A2. So we would say angle A1 is equal to angle A2, or what we mean by congruent, right? And then B1 is equal to B2, right? So angle B1 is equal to angle B2, and so on. And of course, the same thing goes for angle C1 and angle C2. Those are also equal. Okay. Now, what about the corresponding sides? Okay, so notice that A1 is across from angle 1, right? So we always label the opposite sides the same as the angle, but lowercase. So angles are typically capital letters, and the sides that are opposite those angles are given by lowercase. Okay, so what do we say about proportional? What do we mean when we say corresponding sides? So corresponding angles, as you can see, are angles that correspond to the same angle in that triangle. For example, I wouldn't say that A1 corresponds to B2, right? Because it doesn't. So A1 corresponds to A2 in this case, and so on. Okay. Now, what do we mean by corresponding sides? Well, we would say that this side corresponds with this side. This side corresponds with this side, and so on. Okay. So what do we mean by corresponding sides are congruent, or not congruent, proportional? Well, what we mean is that we would say that A1 divided by A2, A2, is equal to what? Any of the other sides. So let's say B1 over B2. Oops. So remember, when we set up a proportion is two fractions that are equal. Okay? So when we say corresponding sides are proportional, we can obtain any one of three different proportions. So we could get this proportion, or we could say A1 over A2 is proportional or proportional to C1 over C2. Or we can say that B1 over B2 is equal to C1 divided by C2. Okay, so any one of those proportions must hold, or actually all three of those proportions must hold. Okay? Now, we can also say, again, this is one way of saying the proportion, but we could also write this a little differently. Okay? And for example, and all I'm going to do is write this. I'm going to change the proportion a little bit. So we can write them this way, right? And now an equivalent way of writing these proportions is by first, let's do cross multiplication, right? We know that if this is the same, then we know that A1 times B2 is equal to B1 times A2, right? And then if I divide both sides by B1, right? And divide both sides by B2, right? What do I get? Well, I get another proportion that is just as valid. So this cancels with this cancels with this, and I get A1 over B1 is equal to A2 over B2, okay? So that's another proportion, that's another way of writing the proportion, okay? So the ratio of corresponding sides, right? So in this one, A1 divided by B1 should be the same as A2 divided by B2. So this is the same as this. So either one will work, okay? So you can set it up either way and it'll be fine. Okay, see you next time.